You're tuned into the Growth Ceilings podcast, the show for builders, dreamers, and leaders ready to break limits and grow beyond what they thought possible.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Growth Ceilings podcast. I'm your host, Jim Lovelady. I'm a professional EOS implementer. We'll talk a little bit about EOS a little later on. I'm really excited today to have with me Brian Basik, the founder and CEO of Polaris Marketing Solutions. Brian and I connected on LinkedIn. He's got a fascinating background, and he's earned his Bachelor of Science degree through the United States Air Force Academy. Thank you for your service, sir. And
You're welcome.
I say that with all gratitude because I am also an Air Force veteran. So thank you for taking the time today to join me for this conversation. This should be a lot of fun. I'd like to dig in right away and understand who you are and what you do. So give us a little bit of a background.
As you said, my name is Brian Basik. I am the father of 3 biological kids. We've had many more kids come through our house. We've done some fostering as well. My children are all early 30s, late 20s. I've got 4 grandchildren that are nearby. It keeps us really busy. I've been married for 37 years to the same woman. That's great. And as you said, I have a interesting background. I started at in the Air Force, and then went into corporate America for 20 some years, and then got into home services businesses. We'll probably talk a little bit about that. Sold that in 2021, launched a digital marketing company called Polaris Marketing Solutions. We just won Best of Florida for digital marketing, so we're pretty excited about that. And I also just launched a second marketing company called Citadel Hardscape Marketing, so that keeps me busy, to say the least.
Yeah, I want to talk about both those businesses because they're both unique value propositions and really interesting what you have for descriptions of both businesses. Before we jump in there and talk a little bit more about the veteran experience. So how long were you in the Air Force?
Well, I was 4 years at the Academy, then 5 years active duty, and then I've done a number of years reserve. I didn't retire. I just had to get out, and I was too busy, and I had too many kids, and I couldn't do the reserve thing, so I had to get out after. I think I've got about 12 years in altogether.
I found personally that the reserve experience was just as taxing as if you were serving overseas somewhere in a remote.
Well, mine was really easy, but it was just I was traveling so much with my corporate job that to
Right.
come back and say I haven't been here all week and now I have to go weekends somewhere else was just not politically acceptable in my house, and I didn't want to do that to my wife, so we decided to just not do the reserve thing anymore. So
And your rank as you exited the service?
was a captain.
So we'll bring it up to current day. You and I connected. I had invited you to today's podcast to talk about growth ceilings. And as you indicated, you've got 2 businesses. We'll talk first about Polaris Marketing Solutions. I believe you have 5 employees, correct? So how long have you been in business with Polaris?
So we launched in 2021 after I sold my company. So actually, I think so. I sold my company in 2021. I started this in January of 2022.
So describe what Polaris Marketing does.
So Polaris Marketing Solutions is a digital marketing company that really kind of specializes on home services. Because before this, I actually bought a home services company in 2015. It was a small one. I was able to scale that and doubled it every year until I sold it in 2021. But one of the things I learned is, so I had to do all the marketing myself at the beginning because I couldn't afford to hire anybody.
Right.
And then as we doubled every year, I could afford to hire someone. I just couldn't find a good company to do what I wanted them to do, was transparent, was not condescending, understood what I was trying to, what I was going through as a business owner. And so I thought, this is harder than it should be to find a good marketing company. And I thought, if I ever get out of this and sell my company, I might get into digital marketing. So lo and behold, in 2021, I was offered a deal I couldn't refuse. So I sold it, and then I immediately got into digital marketing.
I hope others are listening to this and hearing your experience and perhaps understand what they can do to learn from your experience. This is excellent. So as you've gone about the last 4+ years, you're coming up on 5 years with Polaris. You've built this business. You're at 5 employees. The topic for today was growth ceilings. So I got to believe coming out of the pandemic and through that whole experience and what you've built to today, you've had some ebbs and flows with the business. Talk a little bit about some of that experience.
So we were able to grow Polaris pretty significantly, pretty quick because the home services guys, I speak their language because I sat in their chair. I understand what it's like to run a home services company. So we enjoyed a fair amount of success right out of the gate. And so to hire my own employees was, I had hired a couple. And then what I did was I basically partnered with some other white label companies that could do a lot of my back end stuff. And as you may know, you've got digital marketing allows you to have not only customers all over the world, but you can have employees all over the world. So I've got employees in Pakistan, in India, in Colombia, in Bolivia, and just a number of different places because I'm not constrained at all by location. And so I can find some really great folks and, the economics are different in different places. And so utilizing, that facet of the business, we were able to not take on a ton of overhead out of the gate with employees by just partnering with the right white label company that could do a lot of my fulfillment out of the gate and allow me to focus on customer service, customer retention, that type of thing.
It's really interesting as you talk about the talent you've been able to amass for your business in other countries. How do you maintain culture, or how do you maintain standards if you want people to be representative values that you've created for your business or the ideal employees that you want? How do you go about managing that long distance when you're dealing international like you described?
It is a challenge. There's no doubt about it. But, there's a challenge in just managing people locally, too, as far as cultural, whether they fit or not. I mean, that's just, what you have to deal with. And so being very articulate in what we stand for, what we accept, what we don't accept, what our culture is like, and that, you're joining this place in our culture. And so we just need to make sure there's a cultural match up front. So we ask a lot of questions. We do personality profiles, all those kind of things to just get an idea of, do you have the personality and the background to make this happen? And we really focus on hiring the right folks out of the gate. This is just not one of those things you just hire somebody in India and they're going to automatically fit. You've got to really do your due diligence up front. Otherwise, it'll be a nightmare from a cultural standpoint, just from being able to deliver things on time and at the quality that you want. And so we spend a lot of time up front on that, and that helps out.
That's really interesting. When you talk about upfront, what kinds of things are you doing to filter and find the right people?
So we go through, a number of the folks that I've hired in like Colombia, as an example, I've gone through an agency that actually specializes in providing talent to seven-figure agencies like mine. And so I'm able to partner with those guys. I speak to their senior leadership team. They know me, I know those guys. They know what I'm looking for. They do all the due diligence as far as that. I look at, we go online, we look at when we do interviews, they have to do presentations and a bunch of other things to make that happen. And so just partnering with the right company, it would be hard to do it if I was just doing it on my own. But by picking someone that has an expertise in Colombia, as an example, with digital marketing resources, has allowed me to not have to do a lot of those things that would be time consuming and that kind of stuff. I can trust that they're going to do it. I know what their process is. I know what their background is. I know that they stand by the people that I hire. So if I have an issue, they'll jump in right away. They ask me all the time how my folks are doing. And so I've kind of had to have these partners with all over the world that help me find talent in their geography, which is good.
So who's the target customer for Polaris?
So it's the home service. It's a home services here in Southwest Florida. And so that could mean anything from screening companies. We've got screening, HVAC companies, fencing companies. I mean, you name it, we have those kind of things. And so what I've learned, and then we'll get into this, I'm sure, in a sec, what I've learned really is if you really want to be good, and we do want to be good, you almost have to niche down a bit. It's hard to be, even in home services, which is a niche by itself. When I'm working with a screening company or an HVAC company, as an example, if I'm setting up citations and directories for those guys, it's a complete different list of directories than it would be for a cement company.
Right.
And so, it helps me deliver better if I can niche down. And so that's why I actually launched Citadel Hardscape Marketing, is because we wanted to focus even more so just from home services to the niche of hardscape guys, those guys who do decking and pavers and cement and that kind of stuff. Because by niching down has allowed me to really become more of an expert at what we do and deliver better results. And so I've gone from home services to now this. I still have Polaris. We still continue to do very well at that. But now we're launching this because my goal would be to go, Polaris is regional. My goal would be with Citadel to go national. There's no reason why I can't do that. I just came from a conference in Louisville, Kentucky, and was able to speak at the National Hardscape Association. So that's the largest association in the North America. And so we had people from Canada and even from Mexico. And so that's really my customer now, is across the country. And so in niching down, I've been able to expand. And so that's been able to help me.
What was the key attributes, or what led you to the hardscapes segment?
Great question. So what I wanted to do was to focus in on a service that was not, there wasn't a roll up. What we're seeing in some industries, and even home services like roofing and HVAC, there's a consolidation across the country. At least here in Florida, there is people just buying these companies left and right.
Yes.
And so, you're working with people that, Apple Roofing as an example, they're out of the Midwest. They probably own 200 roofing companies, right? And so that's not my customer. But there's this continuous roll up. So I wanted to pick an industry where there wasn't a roll up, where the owners were really locally based and that they were family owned for the most part. I was looking for something that had a ticket price of anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000. And the reason is, just from a marketing perspective, if I can help them significantly, if I can take the number of leads they have from 10 to 20, and maybe their close rate from 5 to 10%, I don't have to give them 100 leads in order to change the life of their business. I can do really well. If the average deal is 10,000 and I bring you 10 more leads and you close half of those, that's 5 leads a month at 10,000, that's $50,000 a month of additional revenue. And so I can ask for and charge $5,000 a month in services. And if they're getting 50,000 in new incremental sales, they've paid that all day, right? And so that would be a different model if I was doing restaurants where the average ticket price is $40.
Right.
And in order to move the needle, I got to bring in 1,000 new customers a month, that none of which you can track. And so, it's just crazy. And so I wanted to pick an industry that was locally focused, that had that ticket price between $5,000 and $15,000, that were interested in scaling their business. And so that's why, and I already had some success with cement and paver companies. We've done some really good things with those guys. And so that was kind of why I picked what I picked.
You mentioned a few minutes ago about geography. We're both here in Southwest Florida. You're in Fort Myers, as I understand, and I'm in Estero, which is south of Fort Myers. I arrived here beginning of this year. We're new. We lived in Illinois for 25 years, and then prior to that in Michigan. I've been told a couple of times, and I've learned this along the way, Southwest Florida is like the service capital of the world. And as you mentioned, service businesses, there's all different types. Pool services, landscaping, HVAC, plumbing, roofing is through the roof, pest control. I mean, I can go on and on with all of the different specialties. And it seems like people have learned those services, they learned those specialties, or they created a widget and they understood how to replicate that widget and decided they're going to start their own business. And there's just a huge amount of businesses here in Southwest Florida that are, say, on the smaller side. They may be a couple to maybe a dozen or two employees, maybe in the $1, $2, $3, $5 million range. What was really interesting, what you shared, not only the focus of the hardscapes category, but you looked at the average sale price, their customers' sale price, and being able to create, it's all a numbers game. It comes back to the same thing, right? Follow the money, right? If you can help somebody generate the revenue, that's where the opportunity is. And it sounds like you got a really good solution put in place, or you're building towards that. One more question about the local area. Are you concentrated currently only on Southwest Florida, or are you expanding into other parts of the country?
So for Polaris, I'm just locally Southwest Florida. For Citadel, I'm across the country. And so it's funny, you said you're from Illinois. I was born in Chicago. And so we moved to Marco Island when I was 12, when there was really nobody there. And so, the west coast of Florida is populated by pretty much the Midwest. It's just how they sold real estate back in the 70s.
Yes.
And the East Coast is Northeast. And so it's an interesting dilemma that we have, that West Coast is Midwest and the East Coast is Northeast, but it is what it is. And so there's a lot of folks from Chicago down here.
There's a ton of population that has moved from Illinois to Florida. It's an amazing transformation. I personally could not get out of Illinois fast enough, given the tax structure and all the changes there. We lived in a place called South Elgin, which is west of the city. Yes, and that was a booming little town itself. We were there 25 years. We had moved there for a job for myself back in 1999. Prior to that, we lived in Ann Arbor, Michigan, go blue. And you see behind me bobbleheads representing Detroit Tigers, Detroit Lions, Detroit Red Wings. Bo Schembechler's down here somewhere. He's around. There he is right there. Bo Schembechler's right there next to the Pistons. And so I'm a big Detroit sports fan, and it kind of ties into EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system, which we talk about 6 components of a business. One of the primary components of a business are people. You and I were talking briefly about your hiring process and how you go about finding the right people. And what I teach with EOS is identifying the right people in the right seats. And I come from, like you, after my Air Force experience, I went into business, sales and marketing, executive throughout my career, almost 40 years in roles all over the country, managing teams between North America, Asia, and Europe. And finding the right people was always a challenge. Better yet, the teams that I served on, leadership teams, an owner will hire people with the best of intentions, or perhaps it's somebody you're related to or somebody you grew up with that you bring into your business. And maybe we can talk a little bit about this as well. And sometimes, even with the best of intentions, it doesn't work out the way you thought it was going to.
Sure.
And how do you prevent those things from happening? And what do you do when you have the wrong person in the wrong seat? And it's part of what I teach with EOS. But let me ask you that question, because you've got a number of experiences in your background. You're an entrepreneur, you're a business owner currently. What do you do when you're faced with that dilemma where you've got the wrong person in the wrong seat?
So if it's the wrong person in the right seat, but they're still on the right bus, I'll find the position, I'll make the position, I'll create it if I have to. I did that when I was in corporate America with Baxter and Cardinal Health and those kind of things. Finding the right person is great and making sure they're in the right seat on the bus. But sometimes I don't have the right seat, but I found the right guy. I know I want him on the bus. And so if I need to have him sit somewhere next to me until we kind of figure out what seat is best suited for them, we could do that. And so finding really good talent is key. And then if you can find great talent and immediately put them in the right role, sometimes you've got to massage roles, as you know, in order to kind of get things to work out. But, I've had situations where I've had really good folks, and I've had folks where they weren't the right folks to be on the bus or in the right seat. And so what I've discovered, even in owning my own business, is you're quick to hire, or you're quick to fire, but you're slow to hire, right? I mean, if you're clearly not the right person, you're not on the right bus, you just got to get them off. Yeah, in cases where I've dragged that out, I've paid the price of doing it. And so when you find someone and they're not in the right position, they shouldn't be on the bus, get them off. I know sometimes it's like, well, it'd be better off they can stay here for a little bit until I find the right person. My experience is get them off the bus as soon as possible, because they're only going to hurt you from the time that, for the rest of the time that they're with you. So that's only my, experience of 20 some years of doing this. So.
Yep, completely agree. You're spot on. And I would add, both with Citadel and Polaris, I'll ask you, have you ever sat down and defined core values for your business?
Sure, we did that pretty, right out of the gate with Polaris. We sat down and said, what our core values are going to be. What do we want to be known for? It's like when I had my home service business, I did the same thing. You being from the Midwest and from up north, there are a ton of services businesses here in Florida, but a lot of them just are not that good. They don't return phone calls. They don't do, just basic stuff they don't do. And so, I set the bar, I don't want to say low, but, when we set our core values is responsiveness, and we're going to say, what does that mean? That means you're going to call people back within 24 hours. You're going to do this, and you're going to do what you say you're going to do. That's pretty simple, but we wanted to make sure that was part of our core values when we started, my home services company. And I would say within a year, it differentiated us. People are like, God, you actually called when you said you were going to call, and you're going to show up. And if we're going to be late, we talked about this with my team. We had a rule that no matter what, if you were going to be late to a customer, I call it my mom's rule. You had to call before you're late. You don't call after you're supposed to show up. That doesn't work. Never worked for me when I was a kid. And so if we're going to be late, if we're not going to make something, we're going to call the customer and say, hey, we're running behind, and we just wanted to give you a heads up, just because that's important for us to be honest. And so we're not going to let you just be stranded waiting the whole afternoon, not wondering where we're at. And so we're going to communicate with you. And so having core values where you articulate what those are out of the gate and you live by those are really important, and they will differentiate you.
Yeah, you talked about just the responsiveness, which I completely concur and have learned here in Southwest Florida. It's kind of like a running joke here is that half the battle is just answering the phone and responding, right? There's plenty to go around. There's an abundance of business here.
Right.
And you articulated, and I agree with you, that there's a lot of small businesses that are kind of running around and not really structured well or have a clear vision and focus on what they're doing. They're not structured as a team. And so they operate in chaos at best. And that's opportunity for me for what I do and hopefully leads to some opportunity in the future as well. Come back to the original topic here about growth ceilings, and probably more so with Polaris since you've been doing that for 4+ years. When you've had the ebbs and flows, I'm assuming, in that business, maybe there's some cycles that you go through, whether it's based on the seasonality here in Southwest Florida. We talk about the summer versus the winter and the snowbirds going back and forth, and how it impacts the population here and impacts all the services and impacts flow of business. Talk a little bit about how you have faced growth ceilings where things have come to a halt, things have ebbed and flowed along the way, and what you've done to overcome that.
Yeah, so one of the things that we decided to do in Citadel that we didn't do in Polaris is we took a lot of business because it was just business, right? It was, some of them were startups, some of them were smaller companies, some were bigger companies. And so what we learned is that not only do we have a very specific niche now, but not only that, but we have a specific size and type of customer that we want to work with. It takes so much more energy to partner or to try to do the marketing for a company that never has done marketing before, that is new. You're launching a new website, all that kind of stuff. And so that's not where I want to spend my time or our resources. We want to really focus on those companies that are at least $750,000 in annual sales and wanting to scale. And because we learned with Polaris, you can spend a ton of time and resources. And if they're just, starting out, they've never marketed before, they don't understand that you necessarily need to spend money to make money. And so you're just working a lot harder for less money with a mindset that's different from what you want. And so for us on Citadel now, we really want to focus on those that want to scale, those that want to grow. And if you don't want to do, we've simplified our process down to we really have 3 different programs that we have depending on the size of the company. And if you don't want to work with us in this fashion, I'm fine to say, just, go with somebody else. That's not me. If you just want somebody to build a website, that's not me. If you want someone to partner with that will help you scale and will do a whole bunch of other things, we do all of that stuff. But we just don't want to do piecemeal because it's just at the end of the day, it's churn. It could be churn. There, after the website, hey, that's great. Now we don't have money to do something else. Okay, that's fine. Well, instead of doing that, so let's focus on those guys that want to scale, that want to grow, that have the mindset and understand that you need to spend money and want to get, like I've got one customer when we first started with him, he's probably doing about 400,000 in sales. And this year he's probably going to hit 3 million, which is a decent sized growth over the past couple of years. And so he's so excited about continuing to grow his cement company. He's hitting on all cylinders. It's a joy to sit down and I'm sure you've had customers like this, where you just sit down and he just wants to pick my brain and say, hey, what do we do? How about this? How about this? And we talk about all that kind of stuff. What a joy to do that versus explaining to a guy why you want to follow up on reviews, right? And why you should ask for reviews and why you should take pictures of your stuff. I mean, I shouldn't have to tell them that. It should be obvious that in order to kind of do what we need to do, you're going to have to take pictures. You're going to have to help us with marketing. Otherwise, we're just not going to be the fit for you. And so as far as scaling goes, I think the thing that's going to make us successful with Citadel is just our focus on those that want to grow and scale because they have that mindset. And working with those will be so much easier than trying to not force a guy, but convince somebody that you should have a Google business profile or you should have a website. That's without say. Does that make sense?
That is an inspiring effect in the role that you play with the customers that you work with. That inspiration makes it all worth it. And it's a qualitative factor that's involved in what you do. And I experience that as well when I'm working with teams and bringing them together to develop a vision, to generate traction in the business and really make the business healthy. And, you mentioned this a moment ago, and I want to come back to it, which about Citadel, your long-term vision, let's say 10 years from now, Where do you see Citadel sitting?
As one of the premier hardscape marketing companies in the country, I think we'll have, we'll literally have hundreds of customers across the country. And if you do this right, if we pick the right partners, we could easily be, a $3 to $6 million marketing company and monthly, annual revenue, which would be a decent size digital marketing company for the niche we want. And that would be something that would be great.
Can you equate that with number of employees as well?
Yeah, I mean, so that would probably be, I'd probably have 30 to 50 employees at that point.
Right. And is that all international labor like you're doing now, or would that be more?
No, I mean, so I've got some local, my ops person is local. One of my account managers is local. I will, where I can, I like to have people around local because it just kind of helps, but I'm not afraid to do stuff internationally because they can be, no one even knows. Like, for instance, I've got one of my account managers is from Colombia. She's awesome. And so one of the reasons I hired her is because if you look at my demographic now for hardscape companies, a lot of them are Hispanic. And so for me to have someone from Colombia that speaks both English and Spanish is a good thing. And so that just bodes well for us.
That just gives you instant credibility with that whole segment. Absolutely. I regret not learning Spanish when I was a kid, and because it's become such a prevalent language here in the United States, and it would be such a big factor, especially here in Florida, given the demographics and the mix of people here. Really good stuff. You talked about the vision in the long term for Citadel. What about Polaris? Where do you see that going?
I see Polaris staying around, as far as revenue, about $1 million in revenue. I think it'll be a local player, but I think my growth will really be on the Citadel side, where we could focus more of our resources specifically on a niche and go deeper and be really good at all of that kind of stuff. And so we'll continue to do Polaris because we've done really well and we do well in this market. We've got a great reputation. Like I said, we just won Best of Florida for digital marketing. And so it is the plane that I'm currently flying. We've taken off on the other one as well, but we'll do both for a while. Will I sell at some point Polaris? I don't know. I've got a lot of good customers that are local that have been with me from the beginning. And so it's hard to distance myself and to think about doing that. But we'll have to see. We'll see which one kind of grows faster.
So the audience for this podcast and the others that I'm recording are business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders of businesses, whether it be finance, sales, operations, who want to understand, learn, contrast from what they're hearing to what they're experiencing. If you could perhaps give advice to aspiring entrepreneur, people thinking about going into business for themselves, what would be like some of the key things you would want to pass to them?
It's a target rich environment. Obviously with AI, there's a ton of changes coming in just about every facet of every business. And so trying to stay on top of all of that stuff is going to be a challenge, but at the same time, it's going to be an opportunity as well. And these opportunities come up pretty quickly. AI, people are saying, hey, you're going to get replaced, digital marketing will be replaced by AI. Well, not really. You better understand how it's going to impact the business, but business owners are still going to need people to help them with marketing. And I think that for entrepreneurial things, the big thing is you want to be able, whatever you're doing is solving significant problems in the market, you'll be fine. And so that's what, if you want to be an entrepreneur, solve some issues and do it better than anybody else, you're going to be fine.
Well, Brian, this has been a fantastic conversation. It's been a pleasure spending this time with you. I hope you've enjoyed it as well.
I have. Thank you so much for setting this up. I appreciate it. I'm glad things worked out and we were able to do this.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining me today. And I want to thank our audience for listening in, and stay tuned for more. My name is Jim Lovelady, professional EOS implementer. We'll look forward to you next time.
You've been watching the Growth Ceilings podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's ready to grow.